panel of the 9.
You're a master. This is a master class in moderating a panel, is what this is. So
That's right.
thank you, Bill.
So welcome to Console Room Satellite 9 2022 Bloomington, Minnesota Doctor Who Convention Panel 9, number 9, about Season 9.
Yeah.
I'm your host and moderator, Bill Evenson. I like Doctor Who. I like Jon Pertwee stories. I like all of them. They're all good. That's the most consistent era of Doctor Who, period, full stop. Who are you?
You're wrong. No, I of course love Pertwee as well. I'm Jeff Elston, also a big fan of Doctor Who. I've been to all the console rooms, and yeah, excited to talk about Season 9, which sadly has yet to be released on Blu-ray in the fancy new collection sets, but I'm sure will be forthcoming, sooner or later. So, and then we've got 2 virtual panelists who we can see in front of us. And I don't know, maybe we'll throw. I'm pointing as if you can tell I'm pointing at you, but we'll throw.
Can you tell which one he's pointing at?
No? Okay. Well, I'm pointing at you, Gabriela, so we'll go to you next.
Hey, I'm Gabby. I'm also a big fan of Doctor Who. I love Pertwee's era. Preparing for this panel was really interesting for me because the way I watched Classic Who the first time was scattershot on Netflix and then binging one era at a time on Daily Motion. So this was really the first time I considered it as a season as opposed to discrete episodes. So I'm excited to dig into that.
Well, I'll tell you, I think what surprises Bill and I the most is that you just said preparing for this panel. So, so I think Bill and I
think we've got a new moderator.
Yep. And then, well, thank you, Gabby. And then I think we'll flip to Mike.
Hi, this is Michael Zecca, and as many of you know, I'm a big Colin Baker fan, but the Pertwee era is my favorite era of the show. Barry Letts is probably my favorite producer of the group. So,
favorite producer ever, like ever for the show?
Yeah, for Doctor Who, absolutely.
Okay, all right.
And as a creator of tie-in audios and novels, also.
Yeah.
Barry Letts.
Yep.
We should do a best producer panel. We did a script editor panel the other day.
That's a
we
good
didn't really
call.
talk about producers.
Take a note.
Yeah, next year. Next year.
Yeah.
This foursome, we'll do the best producers.
Yeah.
Okay. I agreed to moderate this panel because I thought it would be a funny joke in an email exchange we were having, and so I don't really have any idea how we're going to do this. I know Mike had and Gabby, you guys both sent some thoughts that you have about the season, but I was thinking the way for me to start it would be to just sort of talk about. I'd like to go story by story. I think I'm a simpleton. I like to do things in an order like that. But Season 9 has the distinction of coming out after Season 8. That's the way they did it in the old days.
Yeah.
That's how the BBC worked.
Yep.
Season 8, of course, introduced companion Joe Grant.
Yep.
And the Master, as played by Roger Delgado.
Yep.
So they were both
and Mike Yates.
And Mike Yates.
Oh, and Mike Yates. Yeah, good point. And they all appeared in every story. The Season 8 famously is it's the Master. I believe, every time.
Story. Yeah.
So Season 9 opens with the first non-Master story.
Yeah.
In a while.
And
also, of the Daleks.
And also the first Dalek
Dalek
story in quite some time.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mike, what do you got? Day of the Daleks. Take it, Mike.
I got to say, this was always one of my favorite stories of the classic era.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. You've got a time travel paradox.
Yeah.
And and trying to unravel that and the way it loops back on itself. I mean, it's lovely. And I'm not a big Dalek fan, but this is one of those Dalek stories that really worked for me.
Well, I would say it's almost in some ways barely a Dalek story, so that might be why you like it if you're not a big Dalek fan.
That might be why. Yeah, well, and introducing the Ogrons, who ended up coming back a few times in the Pertwee era, and it kind of fleshed out the Daleks and their empire a little bit. It is in some ways kind of referencing back to Dalek Invasion of Earth, and it's another Dalek Invasion of Earth in the future that actually worked. But then there's things in the present day and the way it ties back and forth. It's lovely. I got to say, I know that James Cameron got in some trouble when he made The Terminator for being quite liberal about talking about how much he was ripping off a Harlan Ellison short story. But if you look at the basic plot threads of Day of the Daleks and the basic plot threads of the Terminator, it's pretty clear he riffed this too. The Terminator was not new to me when I saw it because I'd seen Day of the Daleks.
Wow, I love that.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good perspective.
Yeah.
Now, do we naturally go to Gabby like they're a...
Well,
Or do I just throw it back and forth? Like this?
Hey, you're the moderator, so you do whatever you want.
I like Day of the Daleks too. Okay, and now we'll go back. Gabby, what do you got?
Yeah, I also really enjoy Day of the Daleks. It's, I think, one of the classic episodes that most utilizes time travel and the way that time travel can be incorporated within a story. So that's always really fun. I love the mention of the Winovich limitation effect because I just love anybody name checks an obscure thing. Like, I've heard of that before. I really love the character moments Joe gets in the whole season, but also in this episode. It's just like you get a lot of really great competent Joe moments. Identifying the dematerialization circuit, doing her escapology, just a lot of really great competent Joe. And then again, like, it's a thread throughout the season, but I think every episode this season has an interesting and sometimes contradictory take on colonialism. And here you see kind of the mirror of the future where the Daleks have colonized Earth and enslaved their peoples, and then in the present, the peace conference, where a lot of the callers are kind of having their chickens come home to roost in terms of the inequities that they've fostered throughout the world, potentially resulting in a huge war. And there's also just a lot of great secondary characters in this. I love Annette. The controller is super creepy, and then right at the end, he gets this moment of sympathy, and you're like, oh, yeah, these people have lived through hundreds of years of bloodshed and deprivation. They're making terrible choices because those are the choices they have available to them. So just a lot of really great secondary characters. And yeah, it all comes together really well.
I like that. I agree. I mean, we all love all of it, so I don't. Just give me a lot of this. I agree, it was great, but in particular, you mentioned what Joe Grant gets to do in this one, and what Joe Grant gets to do throughout the whole season. I think we'll come back to this. It's amazing to sort of look back at season 8, like I said, with her introduction. It doesn't look good. It's not going to go well. This is she's not going to be a fully realized character. She's a bumbling, pretty
She's a ham-fisted bun vendor.
She's literally a ham-fisted bun vendor. In a miniskirt. You know what I mean? And that's where season one of the ways I think season 9 succeeds is, she becomes an actual character. By the time she leaves, she's one of the better fully realized characters.
You get to see a bit of her developing social consciousness too when they're talking about the importance of Sir Reginald Styles and the peace process.
And I'm curious, just based on your introduction, Gabby, how do you feel, since you said this was sort of your first time watching season 9, like as a season, does anything stand out to you about this story as a season opener? You know what I mean? Like, does it feel sort of sufficiently, I don't know if important is the right word, but does it feel like a season opener, or is it just sort of like another story when you watch it in context?
Yeah, that's interesting, because I was watching it as a season, but I don't think I was watching it in the sense that I watch New Who season, where I'm expecting certain story beats where, like, the season openers really got to grab you, and then the season closers really got to wrap everything up. So it didn't quite strike me in that way, but it did. It was interesting to see as I watched these episodes. Oh, they are still working with like very similar themes, and even if it's not intentional, they're all like writing in this moment in time. And it does create like a cohesive piece of work.
Yeah, and I think we were actually in a different panel earlier, actually the Back to the Future panel. We were talking about how, for a show about time travel, Doctor Who doesn't actually play with time travel all that much, especially in the classic era, and even in the modern era until Moffat takes over. But I think that's the thing that always stood out to me about this story, is that it is very time travel-y. You know, there's the paradox. There's Joe and the Doctor seeing themselves, at the beginning of the story, and then the whole, they're coming back in time. The gorillas are coming back in time to try to avert something that's already happened in their present, and what does that mean from a paradox standpoint? And I think as a kid seeing it for the first time, I think I always just sort of thought it was confusing. But then I realized that the controller is the guy who played the Candyman in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, which somehow made him creepier. Because I feel like as the controller, he's so he almost has this like sort of like fake smile on his face, and it's very much like he's controlling this ordered sort of society, which for me was very creepy and I think very well done. So getting to what you said about the characters in this story, I think are great. So I think there's a lot to like, but it's definitely a different kind of story as far as the time travelingness of it.
Yeah,
It has a certain epicness to it, with the traveling back and forth between the two time periods, with giving us backstory on what happened in that future Earth without actually seeing it all.
Yeah.
We fill enough of the pieces in. It's a fairly epic story.
Yeah.
Also, you're talking a lot about Joe Grant, but there's some wonderful moments here and again in the Time Monster at the end of the season for the Unit Boys.
Yeah.
Benton and Yates have
Yeah.
some wonderful interplay in both of those stories.
Yeah.
That bit
Yeah.
where Joe is retrieving a sandwich and stuff for Benton, and then
Yeah.
Yates comes along and pulls rank on him.
Yeah. Yeah. RHIP.
He gets his cheese and wine stolen. He gets turned into a baby later.
Yeah.
Yeah, he really does. Yeah, they kind of do him dirty sometimes.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, doesn't get cheese, gets turned into a baby.
But it does flesh the character out and gives him
Absolutely.
some memorable moments of screen time.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah, and I think you can probably draw some parallels to even probably all of New Who, but certainly the first couple of seasons as you think about like that sort of extended family of
Extended, yeah.
Unit was that extended family, and to your point, Mike, like this really goes some way towards humanizing them more and making them more characters rather than just sort of a character, sort of a guest actor du jour type of thing. But to your point, though, they were in damn near every story for sure of season 8, and then a lot of 9 and 10 and 11 as well. So, and you really do see with Joe, with Mike, with the Brigadier, you see these sort of character things evolving. How Mike ends up leaving Unit, and the burgeoning relationship of the Brigadier and Doris, which we hear more about in Battlefield, and so these seeds are being planted that we can now look back on retroactively, which is kind of cool.
Well, and another thing you were talking about, does it really launch the season? Or I mean, in some ways, the epicness of having a Dalek story for the first time in 5 years?
Yeah, I think it was 5 years.
It's a big deal
Yep.
in Britain. And if you look again at the structure of this season, the first story and the last story are about time.
Well, that's a good call. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm glad you did that because I was going to go back to that. I thought it was a great question that you asked Gabby. Is there something about it that makes it feel like a season opener?
Yeah.
And I think based on your response, I think the answer is generally no.
Yeah.
But you're right, Mike. At the time, it probably was a big deal to have the Daleks come back. So there was probably that element to it. The only thing I can really think of when I'm watching it is that scene with the 2 doctors and the 2 Joes.
Yep.
It gives that real sense of we're going to start this adventure. Remember these characters?
Yeah.
You love these characters,
Yes.
and they have that fun little interaction. I like that about it. But
Yep.
other than that, it's not. Yeah, it's not the season opener in the sense that you'd expect it nowadays.
Yeah.
Right. True.
Another
But I think
just-
a lot of them weren't then. There weren't a lot of sort of big epic season openers. To your point, Gabby, like, you don't necessarily, certainly wasn't made that way at the time, and we don't watch it the same as we do a modern show, because you expect this kind of a beat in a season opener, and then you expect maybe a little bit of a valley, and then you expect everything to kind of ramp back up for the
Hint of what's to come.
for the a thread that runs through. But yeah, I think the Daleks probably make a big stride towards it being the start of a season. But I do think the one thing that stands out to me as far as that being a little bit of a anticlimactic is because in their last story, they went out with such a bang and it was so epic from a Dalek standpoint that, when they show back up in Day of the Daleks, it's sort of like, oh, well, there's 3 of them. And this is what they're doing. Like it just doesn't feel like it carries the same epic quality.
I thought you were going to say something else, which is to us now, seeing the Daleks come back is like, oh.
Oh, that's true. That's true too. Yeah.
Okay.
But at the time, they would have thought they were
Let's see
done
what
forever.
they do this
Yeah.
time.
Yep, that's true.
Yep.
Very true.
Another interesting thing I found with this whole season, this is before the 3 Doctors. This is before the Doctor gets full control of his TARDIS.
That's true.
And yet they're off world quite a bit in this story.
Yep.
There's time travel in 2 stories.
Yep.
There's traveling about different places.
Yeah.
I was really surprised at how much they were opening things up already because
Yeah.
the previous 2 seasons had been mostly set on Earth,
Yes.
except when the Time Lords whisked them away and caught
Yes.
them in space. But we're starting to open the door to
Yes.
traveling out there again, and but also you had a nice balance of old monsters coming back, Daleks
Mhm.
and Ice Warriors versus new ones being introduced, Sea Devils. You had a nice balance of having the master back some, but not overusing him.
Yes.
Like they were really finding the right balance in the storytelling this season.
Agreed.
Well, that's a
Yeah,
nice
it's really
seg.
the season that has everything.
Yeah.
I was going to say that's a nice segue. I don't know if you did that on purpose. Nice segue to the next story, which is an off-world story.
Yeah.
With those returning ice warriors you talked about.
Yep.
The Curse of Paladin.
Paladin. I think it's Paladin. Yeah.
Peloton, it's at
Peloton.
The Curse of
right?
Peloton.
That's
I saw the stocks. They really went
Oh, well,
in the tank.
if anyone watched and just like that, it really was the Curse of Peloton. Apparently. Sorry, Mr. Big.
All right, Gabby. Sorry, were you going to get something to drink or something?
Yeah.
No, I'm good. I got
Okay.
it.
Curse of Paladin.
Yeah, no, just a classic episode. This is the one I own on DVD because I just enjoy it a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just a lot of just great 3 Joe moments in here. That little bit of unspoken communication where they just exchange a look and Joe
Yep.
slips away.
Yeah.
Joe just rolling with the punches and being like, "Yeah, I'm a princess now."
Yes.
They're such a good team, and just
Yes.
watching this,
Uh-oh.
just like, yeah, your chemistry is solid, your communication is solid, looking out for each other. You're always so concerned the other is in danger. Like, this team is to put it on unfortunate that were revealed and they did not. Yeah, it's a really, yeah, my internet connection is a little unstable.
Yes.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes,
We're
can,
some of
but
it.
I'll tell you what. Maybe we'll come back to you. Well, now you look good. Well, no, now you're. now you don't again. All right, but we got some of that.
Yes.
Yeah, I was pretty much done. I just want, yeah.
Okay.
Overall, really great episode. I do
Yes.
think it's interesting
Yes.
that it's presented as such an unalloyed good
Yeah.
for Peloton to be joining the Federation. And they're
Yes.
like, we're definitely not going to strip mine you. And why would you doubt this? Progress is good. Your superstitions are silly.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm like, very soon you are going to be in the episode The Mutants,
Right.
which is mirror of this episode.
Yeah.
And it's going to turn out that those kind of superstitions were actually important.
Yeah.
And erasing your culture
Yeah.
was actually bad. So
Yeah.
that one's a little bit of a different perspective from the other episode that season.
And I consider that to be a strength of the Let's Dix era. And we were
Yeah.
talking about it on the script editor panel, that you can see what thoughts that might be more of a Terrence Dix political philosophy,
Yeah.
and you can see thoughts that are absolutely not a Terrence Dix philosophy. He was a big believer in letting the writers express their own personal thoughts, especially
Yeah.
Malcolm Hulke, for example.
Absolutely. Yep.
And I think that's a highlight of this era generally.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would co-sign, I think, everything you said, Gabby, as far as like it's just for me, it's such a classic serial, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, Mike, with going more off-world. So we've got the TARDIS landing on an alien planet, which I love the landing of the TARDIS,
Yeah.
on the side of a mountain during a storm.
Yeah.
It's tipping over, and then they get out and it does tip over. Like, so that's immediately how you lose the TARDIS. So I love all that. I love what you said about this sort of unspoken relationship between the Doctor and Joe. Like immediately, when they're like, well, surely you'd never let a woman in here who wasn't of royal blood. And she's like, you're damn right, I'm a princess. Are you going to introduce me or what? And then, when she slips away, because, she and the Doctor share this glance and she's like, yep, I'm going to go. Like, there's just this great connection between them. There's, you've got the sort of the left turn with the Ice Warriors must be the bad guys. Oh, well, they're actually not. You've got a head in a jar. You've got a six-armed, okay, I forget now what they
Penis?
call it. With a cape.
Hermaphrodite hexapod.
That's
That's
Wrong
right.
panel.
Hermaphrodite hexapod. That's right. Shout out to Usain Churchman, who came back to voice Alpha again 50 or whatever years later. And yeah, it's a really good romp. It's just such a good. It's 4 parts. So for me, it sort of fits all of the class. What I think of from my youth as what I watched every Friday night on Iowa Public Television. 4 episodes. Bad guys, good guys, TARDIS. and then sneak off at the end when Amazonia shows up.
Good guys that you think are bad guys.
That's right.
It succeeds so well that it's surprising that the show doesn't kind of do it all over again all the time. They actually do go back to Peladon, and it's not as good. But,
it's not as good, and it's too long.
Maybe that's why.
Yeah.
I also enjoy that episode.
Oh yeah, no, I do too. Yeah, like I said, if I say anything bad about a Pertwee story, I'm only saying it's a little bit of a thing. Yeah. It went from a 10 to a 9.
You're right.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that, not that this is a season 11 panel, but one of the things that Monster of Peladon, I think, suffers from is the fact that it's made to be 6 episodes instead of 4, and it's just sort of overlong. But its message, as far as reflecting what was going on in the world of the era with the miners' strike and that sort of thing, is very interesting. And but yeah.
I think it also suffers because it makes the Ice Warriors the bad guys again.
It really does, yeah. So it's sort of, it does everything you'd expect it to. So that's
so great when you did it last time. Like, you kind of undercuts it. To me.
Yes, yeah, exactly. But we're not here to talk about season 11.
I wanted to say Brian Hells did some excellent world building.
Yes, yeah.
That's part of what made Peladon so compelling, that we were able to go back 2 years later. And
that's a really good point.
Going back soon.
Yep.
You know, he really fleshed out the politics of this world, the religion of this world, and how that interplays, plus all these other cultures, not just the Ice Warriors who we brought back in a different way, but the Arcturans and the Centauri and so forth. And with the Ice Warriors, you know, again, that idea of they're actually the good guys, but we don't know that. We have an expectation walking in and this. How many of the other classic big-name Doctor Who monsters, like the Daleks, Cybermen, Centaurans, etc., do we see in that light across the series, where we see both sides of the coin? The Ice Warriors have really been fleshed out in a wonderful way.
Yeah.
None are coming to mind.
Not really. I mean, you have the sort of...
the closest it comes is that Big Finish spare parts. We at least have some sympathy for how they became the Cybermen, but that doesn't even count.
The New Adventures did try to kind of bring that side of the Silurians in Chibnall.
Silurians. There you go.
When you brought the Silurians back, but yeah, it really is new. It's innovative. It's something that's not been done much in the series.
Yeah,
and it does make the whole mystery of the story go better, because you're walking in with expectations that are incorrect.
Yes, yeah, that's a really good point.
And Hepesh is such a good character too, because he's treacherous, but he's doing it with the best of intentions. And the way Arcturus manipulates him. I think that's another theme in the series, is you have a lot of villains with the best of intentions.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's you have that in multiple. You have with Hepesh and with Arcturus and with we think the Ice Warriors, but not really the Ice Warriors, and and we think Agador, but not really Agador. So like it's almost like there's these false starts, or these sort of again left turns that make you think, oh, it's all Hepesh, it's all Agador, it's all this, but it's really a sort of combination of those things. But to your point, Gabby, with what each person at least thinks is the best of intentions. Like Hepesh wants the best for Peladon, he's just maybe not doing it quite the right way.
Yeah, this was Doctor Who doing PG-rated Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
You know, it's funny because we're talking about it and we all love it and we're all sort of agreeing on all these great structural things about it that are great strengths not only of the series but just the writing of this story in particular. And we're sort of leaving out the fact that if you have it on and anybody walks in the room at any point, they're going to go, what is this garbage? This story is so silly looking. The monster,
Agador?
Arcturus?
Oh, Arcturus, the
He's
head in a jar.
It looks like someone's just shaking a stick. I mean, it's just in some ways, it for me personally, it's one of the things I love about it. Is that it walks that line to me of where say a web planet fails for me.
Sure.
Is they're trying to do something spectacular and it doesn't quite work.
Yeah.
Especially Alpha Centauri. I can't believe that was on television.
Twice.
The King's little kill. That kill is so silly. Every time the king stands up, and you're like, "Wait, you're ruling in a short skirt."
Yeah, I forgot about that part. Yeah, I actually don't like him. I don't like his character, and I don't like that actor. I don't like Troughton in that role.
You don't like David Troughton?
Not in that role. I think he's too wet.
Yeah.
Okay?
I could see that.
He really annoys me.
Yeah, but I sort of wonder.
Like he's going to start crying. Like he's supposed to be given a decision, and he looks like puppy dog eyes. I don't know what to do.
Well, okay,
I think that's some of the point.
Let's think about the context of the time period, though. So he became king, it sounds like fairly young.
Very young,
So
yeah.
these advisors
Yeah.
were around him. Age-wise, isn't he roughly the same age that Prince Charles was at the time?
Oh, I bet it's similar. I mean,
So is there maybe some discussion of what it might be like if Charles was king?
could be, yeah. I mean, and I think that absolutely contextualizes some of what Hepesh is doing, because again, he's doing what he thinks is best based on his more sort of old school mentality, whereas Troughton, well, not Troughton, but he's doing he's trying to do what he thinks is best, but lacks the experience and the gumption to really do it, i.e. he seems sort of wet, and like he can't make
It is
these
part of his
decisions.
character.
I think it is. Yes, I think it is. But I can see how that would make him not super likable, and the purple hot pants maybe don't add to that. And certainly all the red hair bouffants. I mean, honestly, it kind of goes to the world building that you said, Mike, because there is a very specific look to people from Peladon, and you would have no doubt if you were flipping channels and you caught a few frames of this story, you'd know you were on Peladon.
Yeah. I was going to say
I get why he's like kind of an annoying character, and it absolutely makes sense that Joe's not going to end up with him because she's way cooler than him.
Yeah, she's better than him.
At the same time, I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. Your dad died young. Your mom died young.
Yep.
You were basically raised by these two advisors with
Yep.
very different viewpoints.
Yep.
And you have all this responsibility for this planet. At the same time, you have to feel like you have to appease both of your two new dads.
Yep.
And it's like, yeah.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Well, and then, as the story progresses, he starts consulting Joe more and more. He sees her as a kindred spirit. She's a princess, and she clearly has a little more experience than he does. So he's really trying to feel her out for some help here.
Yep.
Also, I gotta say, I really love the relationship between Joe and Islir as the story progresses, and the other Ice Warrior Sorg. I mean, the Ice Warriors there really kind of attach themselves to Joe. They don't necessarily trust the Doctor, but they trust her.
Yeah, because she doesn't come with the bias that the Doctor does of Ice Warriors are evil. Joe just comes in with like, well, it seems like they're helping, so let's let them help. There's no reason for me to think that they're doing anything other than positive, and it turns out that's what they're trying to do.
And that's also refreshing from a Doctor Who companion, because how many of them would just scream in terror and just like, oh, they're ugly, so they have to be evil.
Wasn't that your
Joe
reaction?
clearly has come along that way.
Yeah.
It's surprising. I just realized we haven't really talked about the Doctor. We've talked a lot about Joe. This season, really, the
Doctor Who?
companion. Yeah, there's a character called the Doctor that's on the show.
Yeah.
And I think it's again another strength of the show that in the Pertwee era that Jon Pertwee is playing the Doctor as that pompous.
Yes.
I can take care of any situation. I own every room, and the writers of the show aren't writing that show.
Right.
He doesn't really, like I said, we just started talking about him. Joe is taking care of this problem.
Yeah.
He's not, I believe he's making it worse at
Sometimes,
first.
yeah.
He does the little hypnotize the.
Yes.
He does some really silly stuff.
He hypnotizes
He's got some
Agador.
great moments with Agador.
Yeah.
Let's face it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
But again, it's striking that Joe, that we are, the more we talk about Joe, she really has come a long way. I'm just repeating myself, but from being that ham-fisted bun bender
That's
already.
right. That's right. Yep.
Well, I think for me, the most interesting thing about the Doctor in this season is his relationship with Joe and with the rest of the unit, because he's still at this place where he's still trying to repair his TARDIS, but it's more about getting out from under the thumb of the Time Lords.
Yes.
You don't have that sense of urgency of having to get off Earth anymore.
Yes.
Because he's got his place, he's got his friends, he's got his job. They hunt down aliens.
Yeah.
And probably watch movies and eat popcorn later.
Yeah. What I love about
Or cheese and wine.
Cheese and wine.
Cheese and wine, as we know from the last story. But what I love about that is, to your point, Gabby, yes, he is trying to fix the TARDIS. He's trying to fix his, I don't know if you can see this, but his dematerialization circuit. And, I love that, even when he thinks he has, he hasn't. It's the Time Lords are sending him on a mission again. Like, oh, I didn't do that. I couldn't have. I love that he keeps sort of, and I think it's because he plays it as such a sort of pompous, arrogant person. Like that's his character. And I like the fact that he gets put in his place. And maybe that's some of what leads to Joe sort of getting bigger, into the action, because he didn't really want to be there in the first place anyway. But for her, it's an adventure. So something to be said for that.
There's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah. What's our next story, Bill?
What's the next story? Why, the next story is called The Sea Devils.
Oh, my.
And if you don't know, the Sea Devils DVD has the feature where you can just listen to the music. You can just listen to the score. A lot of the DVDs have that.
Yeah.
But I just recommend, if you've got nothing better to do on an afternoon, is turn on the Sea Devils soundtrack and see how your day goes.
Yeah, well, and
sure.
Bill, that's a very good point, because I did want to talk about Malcolm Clark's soundtrack to that story.
Yeah.
And there are a number of good scores this season, but this one in particular, it is so alien and different. But at the same time, it evokes the alien weirdness of the score to the Silurians 2 years before.
Yep. Yes, that's very true. And I think that I do kind of wonder, was that deliberate? You know, was that a deliberate echo because of the relationship between the Sea Devils and the Silurians? I don't know, but if it wasn't, then what a stroke of luck, I guess, which is probably more likely what it was.
Well, and we even kind of get a theme song for the Master, which is
yes.
Well, that's right. Okay, so it's the Return of the Master.
That's
they
right.
Couldn't stay away for too long.
And it's the Return of the Master from where we left him. He was captured at the end of the Demons, at the end of season 8.
There's a continuity there.
And he's in prison with.
We will not always see this much continuity in the Master's story.
We will not.
It's a special prison just for
him.
From the looks of it, which is evocative of things we've seen in other franchises. So
Yes.
he's a big deal.
Yes.
So
And of course, he's immediately hypnotized the guy in charge, Trenchard, who's in charge, and he's calling the shots, but we don't realize that right away, which is kind of neat. Like, we just think that, yep, he's in prison and everything's copacetic, but then we quickly realize, nope, he's hypnotized the guy in charge and he's going to do what he's going to do. So,
He's the Master. What are you going to do?
He's the mob boss running the prison.
He 100% is. Yes, I don't know that there's any other prisoners in that particular prison, to your point, but he's definitely running the show. I mean, he gets to watch the Clangers.
He gets to watch the Clangers.
Yeah, he gets.
I love the Master's obsession with
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's so good that they basically just repeated that again in the
Yeah.
new series. That's one of the few times that I've seen the new series just blatantly repeat a scene.
Yeah.
Is when the John Sim, what does he watch?
Teletubbies.
What did you say?
Yeah, Teletubbies.
Oh,
Teletubbies.
Teletubbies.
Yeah,
That's
exactly,
right.
exactly,
That's
yeah.
right. Yes. Yeah. Same thing. Yep. I love that.
Gabby, the Sea Devils.
Oh, yeah. Just everything Michael said about the music.
Yeah.
Just love how alien that feels. Love the moments with the Master and the Doctor. You can really see that sense of that they've had a relationship for a long time. And
Yeah.
They know little things about each other, and they have little petty barbs they can do
Yep.
with each other. There's so many great moments. The Clangers, also like that sword fight scene with
Yep.
the sandwiches. Talk about the third Doctor being pompous.
Yeah.
Just like, I'm just going to eat a sandwich.
Eat a
while holding
sandwich.
this whole thing. Here, have
Yes.
the sword back.
Yeah.
Well, and it continues a theme all season of the Doctor's obsession with food.
Yeah. Cheese and wine.
Poor
Sandwiches.
Dawn, her sandwiches. He eats all of them.
Yep. Yeah.
That it's honestly a little uncomfortable. He
Yeah.
really just
It's the pompousness. Like, that's
It's
how
real-
he
yeah.
played him. Like, it didn't matter if it was how he was speaking or how
is
how
the
he was
Doctor the
eating.
good guy in season 9? I don't.
Maybe not. At least
But
he's.
it makes those moments, I feel like, even more special with the people that he is friends with, because Joe is the one who can puncture that pompousness.
That's
Right.
true.
He'll be going on all pompous, and she'll make a little comment, and he'll make his face look like,
Right.
you caught
Yeah.
me. You
Yeah.
got me. Little
Yes.
chuckle.
Yes. Agreed. Yep.
What do we think
I-
of
I-
the Sea Devils? Do we like
Oh my
their
God,
look?
they are one of my favorite looks for a Doctor Who monster
Oh, wow.
across the entire
They'll-
series.
They're the next Doctor Who monster.
Yes, and oh my God, I just
Well-
about fell out of my chair, so excited when I saw that.
We'll
clip.
see him in a couple months.
It has that same look that it had in 1972, but
Yeah.
it's facial expressions. That's
yes.
all I needed.
Yeah.
You know,
I was
because
actually
it
really
was-
surprised by that.
Obviously, a rubber mask in 72 that could barely move its lips. But
Yeah.
it looked good. The turtle-like design just really worked well.
Yeah. I think the only
Plus,
thing that.
I'm just go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think the only thing that fails the design a little bit on the Sea Devils is the fact that, the elongated neck is so clearly where the actor has to see from that
Yes.
it just reads a little bit too obvious.
Yep.
But that's minor. Like,
I don't even.
Yeah,
I never
yeah.
noticed that. I know it, but I.
well, we
doesn't
saw
bother
how
me.
bad your eyesight is when you look at your phone, so I think that you're a bad litmus test for that. So,
When's the season 9 panel?
yesterday. You missed it.
I was going to say also, just in case anybody isn't aware of this, the Sea Devil costume has made an appearance outside of Doctor Who as well. In the season 4 opening episode of Blake 7, They reused the Sea Devil costume for the creature that Dorian had in the basement. It's sort of like the portrait of Dorian Gray as a life form.
They
just basically repainted a Sea Devil costume and
wow. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
I think it's a cool thing to see after the Ogrons and all the creatures in Peladon.
Yeah.
We're just continuing to get these great, iconic, what has now become iconic designs.
Yeah.
And in a sense that if you were a kid watching the show, you could probably try to draw this. I could just picture scribbling it, and it's a very specific design. And, and if you drew a Sea Devil, it'd probably look just as good as the one on TV.
Yeah. Quite possibly. Yeah.
Maybe not.
Well, and as compared to their Silurian cousins, there's a certain extra danger level with the Sea Devils. All this stuff in this story involving submarines and other naval apparatus and oil rigs and everything else, they can just pop up from under the water and start causing trouble.
Yeah.
And you don't see them coming. They can come in and cut the side of your submarine and sink you.
Yeah, right. And I think that's so key to the Pertwee, well, the season 7, 8, and 9 in particular, but the Pertwee era, I'd say in general, because it was either until he got control of the TARDIS back, it was either in general, it's either you go to the monsters or the monsters come to you. But I think what's great about the Silurians and the Sea Devils both is that it's not even the monsters come to you; it's that the monsters have always been here. And to your point, they can just pop up out of the water and kill you that way. Of course, the fact that they're more than just monsters, I think, is great and feels very Pertwee to me. It's not just that they're monsters. They have a claim to this planet that's equal to or greater than humans. So it presents a different level of dilemma. It's not just let's defeat the monster. It's we have to figure out the best way to navigate this because they have a right to be here too.
I think another thing that sets this episode apart is just how good it looks because of all of the help from the British Navy.
Yeah.
Just all the different equipment, all the different shots they were able to get since they were donating their time.
Yep.
My favorite behind the scenes story for this episode, well, actually my second favorite, the other one is how afraid Roger Delgado is of water. But the second favorite is that they made the submarine from prop from Woolworths that they modified.
Sure.
And then got a call from the Navy about how they managed to get a hold of their secret prototype blueprint.
It was MI6 actually.
Yeah.
Just like something that was in development.
Yeah. Talk to Woolies. Got it from them.
Yeah. The number of propellers the number of fins on the propeller that they did was 23, which was what British nuclear submarines had. So
wow.
How did you learn this? You realize you just declassified something.
So that really is a bigger question for Woolworths because that means that someone who designed for them probably either really luckily guessed or they might have been the leak.
No, it was the Doctor Who prop department because they modified the fin.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yep.
That was on the Woolies model, so they used a fan out of a Hoover.
Yeah, sure. So maybe it was Hoover. Maybe they were the ones that had the government secrets. Who knows?
There's so many interweaving plot lines in this story.
Yeah.
And, in many ways, I hadn't really remembered this, so I went back and rewatched it this week, but across the 6 episodes, it really is very much like a serial like it was in the Hartnell era because they're just bouncing around doing so many things with so many different people. There's the plot line with the submarine crew with Donald Sumter captaining things. And if you don't know who Donald Sumter is, he played Meister Lewin on Game of Thrones and Rassilon in Hellbent. And here he was as a submarine commander as a young man. We've got all the stuff with Captain Hearts.
Yeah.
We've got the there's talking about Trenchard. We also have that person from the ministry who comes in talking about pompous buffoons. And this is another thing I wanted to say because that reminds me that minister really treated Captain Heart's aide in a very sexist manner.
Oh yeah.
And she wasn't taking any of his crap.
Yeah.
And that's a theme across the season I see as well, is that there are some very prominent women's roles in the season. And granted, it's 1972, so it's not as progressive as we would expect today.
Sure.
But for 1972, if you look around Aubrey Woods and Day of the Daleks, most of the women in that control were women. They were women.
Yep.
Captain Hart's aide was more than just a secretary to fetch him things. She was an aide in all respects.
Yeah.
And we also get that in The Time Monster with the woman scientist.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Is the lead
She was
scientist. Stuart is her assistant.
Yep, absolutely.
I feel like, It's a really great season for women in roles that are nuanced and powerful. I feel like the only one that really reads as dated to me is Dr. Ingram, just because they keep having to hang a lampshade on her feminism.
Yeah.
I feel like if it was being written now, you'd just like write her lines. You wouldn't write the line where like someone reacts to her and it's like, "Ooh, all God bless the good ship women live." But that's the only part.
Yeah, I would say the other place that they maybe fell down was the mutants, because Jo is the only
yes.
woman basically in the story. But even in Curse of Peladon, Jo as a princess is taking that leadership role again. So in 4 out of the 5 stories, we did some pretty good things with her, which is great.
Agreed. Yeah.
The other thing that I think about the Sea Devils is I think maybe it's a little bit too long. When I'm actually sitting to watch it, I think those middle episodes do lag a bit. There's a lot of, I'm gonna break into prison,
into and
out of prison.
yeah.
You're gonna eat some sandwiches. We're gonna play golf.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys talking on the phone, kind of stuff. It seems to me like it's not. At some points, it feels like it doesn't even know where it's going, but I don't hate it. It's fun.
And I think that's no different than many
Six-parters?
6-parters and 6-parters, 7-parters, even some 5-parters. Oh, there's only a couple 5-parters. But yes, I think that because it was serialized, like that's just, you take the good with the bad as far as that's concerned.
I don't really watch classic Who for the tightly paced plot.
Exactly, yes. It's not.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true.
What's our next story in our last 18 minutes?
I haven't seen it. It's called The Mutants.
Oh, The Mutants, right, yep.
This isn't the first story we've had called The Mutants.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Well, I'm not going to address that.
That's a different panel for another
Mike,
time.
The Mutants.
First thing that sticks out for me, first of all, just say, I think I missed The Mutants on my first pass through the Pertwee era.
Oh, wow.
I think just when it first aired on PBS, I missed it. So I came back to it later in my life. And I got to say, it's full of really good name actors in there. You've got Eric Hagen, who played Biggs in Star Wars as Kai. You've got John Hollis, who played Lobot in Empire Strikes Back as Sondergaard. Jeffrey Palmer's on the first episode as the administrator that's assassinated. They really, and even the fellows playing Stubbs and Cotton were fantastic. They really, George Pravda pops up as a scientist in a much more evil role than he gets in A Deadly Assassin later on. We really have a nice mixture of guest actors in this story.
Yeah, that's true.
And also a theme I noticed with this one as well, coming back to it later like this. Many of us, of course, that grew up on 80s who were excited by Full Circle and the whole idea with the Alzarians having this cycle.
Oh, yeah.
Long period where they kind of evolved between different forms.
Yep.
But that was set in place in the Mutants.
Yeah. Yeah. And we see the whole thing. Like, in Full Circle, we see the different stages, but in the Mutants, we see it, the evolution actually happening, on the screen, which is really cool.
And accelerated because of the environmental damage being caused by the Skybase crew.
Yes. Yeah. And this one to me sort of stands out as the I don't know, I feel like the most sort of,
preachy?
maybe, but the most sort of like the Time Lords have said, go do our bidding. They've literally given him a box to give to somebody. They won't say who, but it'll open for the right person. So he's literally their errand boy. Like, and I know he has been in other ways, but like this one just feels the most literal translation of that because they have to physically pass something to somebody, on Solos. So
again, a limp doctor.
Yeah, true. Yeah, he's doing what he's told to do. That's
It seemed like it's a Pertwee thing, but it is. This whole season.
It really is. I wonder if it was deliberate. Probably wasn't, but interesting now to look back on 50
honestly,
years later.
I think if you listen to those commentary tracks, the impression that Terrence Dix likes to give is that he does take delight in puncturing that Pertwee pompousness.
Absolutely, which
it's
great.
It's, as we're talking about season 9, and it's occurring to me, he's very ineffectual.
Yeah, that's the Doctor is not Terry.
That's what the charm of the Doctor in any incarnation is. Like, he is so powerful, and so smart, he's done so much, so many things, but he's also kind of an idiot.
Yeah,
and it's delightful.
And it's fun to see him get knocked down a peg. Yeah.
He's gonna topple an empire, and then he's gonna trip over his own 2 feet and land in a battle of custard. And
even when he goes to do his Venusian Aikido is kind of silly.
Sort of. Yeah.
Yeah, this episode was interesting to watch in 2022 because honestly, the first thing I thought in that first scene was, God, you guys have terrible masking etiquette. Like they're just taking off their masks to shout. It's a poison atmosphere, you idiot.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
That's great.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I don't know if you saw earlier. I don't know if that panel was streamed or not. But our own Bill took his mask off to cough. So that shows you how history repeats itself 50 years later. So.
But yeah, this is a really great episode. I actually on rewatch I had remembered the mutants looking much more embarrassing than they actually did. I thought,
Yeah.
you know, especially when they're in shadow and you've seen parts of them, they're pretty creepy.
Yeah.
I'm impressed. It's like good monster design.
Yeah, I think it's always difficult when it's an actor in a rubber suit, especially in 1972. It's hard to make it not look like an actor in a rubber suit. So, and I think to me there was always, and I don't know if it was just my younger brain, but would always sort of, I would blur together the Sea Devils and the mutants a little bit because I felt there were always similarities between like their heads in particular. So sometimes I'd sort of get which monster was which confused. But yeah, they're I would say sufficiently menacing when they're more shadowed, maybe not quite so much so when they're sort of lit full on. But again, that's completely forgivable and very normal in Doctor Who. So who cares?
Well, and I got to say, the first time I saw a mutant, again having missed mutants a few times on the Pertwee run, was Brain of Morbius.
Oh yeah, the one that falls down the mountain. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they reuse the claw, inside Morbius's body. It's like I didn't know what that was at the time. I thought it was just invented for that story, but they were actually just recycling an old costume.
That's right. Well, it's just like in Stones of Blood, where we see a Weirin and a android from Android Invasion, locked up in a cell. So if you got them around, might as well use them.
I really got to watch this show. I
It's
don't have any
Doctor
idea
Who. It's really good.
I didn't know.
Yeah,
I didn't know.
It's good.
Glad you guys had a lot to say about the mutants because I don't have much to say about the mutants.
Right. Well, we only have 12 minutes left.
We only got 12 minutes left.
And
so.
one more story?
Well, and it definitely was a big criticism of British colonialism.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, to what you said earlier, Gabby. Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
And interestingly, you've got Stubbs and Cotton. This is a Bob Baker and Dave Martin script, by the way, the guys that invented K9. But Stubbs and Cotton, to me, feel kind of like your classic Robert Holmes guest star dual act.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and it's interesting that Stubbs is the first one of the two to start coming around, and then when we lose him, that's what finally turns Cotton around and realizes how bad all this is.
Mm-hmm.
And given that in Cotton's own ancestry there was some pretty bad colonial effects, it's interesting it took him that long. And we talked about gender diversity in the rest of the stories, but there's a little bit of racial diversity on the Skybase.
No, that's true.
A little bit.
Not just Cotton, but there was at least one other guard that was darker skinned. So
yeah.
And good, at least. It's a sad commentary on the on society that it stands out as much as it does, but it's good to see.
Yeah, it's better than what it had been.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that Cotton was clearly from a place that had been colonized, both in his appearance and his accent, and then at the end we do have him becoming in charge of the Skybase.
Yeah,
his priority is to help undo the damage that's been caused, and then to leave because none of them belong there.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Well,
the season finale.
One more story. Yep.
The Time Monster.
Da, 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 da. I really like the Time Monster. I'm just going to come out and say it.
Me too.
I think
I love that one.
I think it's a lot of fun.
Oh, good.
I love all the stuff with the two TARDISes. I'm totally obsessed with anything sort of TARDIS related anyway. I have a TARDIS tattooed on my body, so the fact that there are two in this one, the fact that there's a time ram, the fact that the Master is using the telepathic circuits to feed the Doctor. Again, the Doctor's being put into his place. He's like, oh yeah, he'll figure out I muted him, and then he figures out how to unmute, and then he's like, well fine, I'll just feed it back to him before he said it, and then it's backwards. Like I love all that. I love the fact that it's very much a tale of two. It's not quite two halves because it's the classic sort of 4-episode, 2-episode, but the sort of Atlantis versus non-Atlantis. It's of course it's over the top. Of course, the whole Kronos thing. With this again man in a costume flapping his wings, chronivore thing. But it's fun. I have a lot of fun with this story, and I wish more people would love it. So.
I watched the same story you did. I don't know if everybody sees the Time Monster that way. But everything you just said is the way I look at it. To the point where I'm convinced that Curse of Fatal Death, everybody knows what that is, right? With the short that
1999.
Moffat wrote in 99.
99, yeah.
that opening scene is just like he's rewriting the same scene from the Time Monster.
Absolutely.
The Master and the Doctor don't really talk to each other,
Right.
From their console rooms ever.
Well, and they don't normally. Remember in Arc of Infinity, the Doctor finally says, he fixed the audio link up circuit. So it wasn't even.
That's right.
We learned then it had been broken for a while.
Yeah.
Maybe it broke in this story because he's like fine, and he doesn't want to. So.
And it is great when he mutes them. There's no disguising the fact that they're mocking.
Yes.
They really do that.
Yes, I love that we've uncovered this thread, and maybe this was totally obvious to other people, but I love that we've uncovered this sort of not incompetent, but certainly knocked down a few pegs Pertwee in season 9. I love it.
Yeah.
Gabby?
Yeah, no, this is just such a great episode. I feel like every character, whether recurring or new, gets a moment to shine, understand what it's about.
Yep.
Just some really great master moments. And honestly, my favorite scene in maybe all of Doctor Who is the coccyx scene. It just gives you endless oh, I think I bruised my tailbone. Sorry about your coccyx, Joe, but these little things are sent to try us.
Yeah, that's right.
Coccyx, your tailbone. I'm sorry about your coccyx too, Miss Grant.
Yes. That's fabulous.
Just hovering in the background there.
Yes.
Trying to look so intimidating.
Yes.
Stupid nemesis keep talking about a freaking tailbone.
That's
until
right.
Finally, he has to jump in, trying to sound menacing.
Yes.
With the silliest thing he has ever said.
Yes.
It delights me so much.
Yes.
And I asked Gomez to say that line, and she said it in Missy's voice, and the way she says it fully activates your lizard brain.
Yeah, I
There's
bet.
video of that online.
I bet.
So I highly recommend finding that.
Awesome.
That's fabulous.
That's awesome.
To make that line.
Yeah. That's amazing.
That's awesome.
Love it.
Yeah. Mike, the Time Monster.
It's fun for me in the way that the Horns of Daimon is fun for me. It's
Sure.
I don't care if it's a little bit cheesy.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah.
And again, I talked earlier about some wonderful character moments with the unit boys.
Yeah,
with
yeah.
Benton and all.
Yeah.
Stuart's actually a lot of fun too. The assistant scientist, he's very happy and fun to play along with. Science-wise, even, Barry Letts talks on one of the DVD documentaries from this season about when you do science in Doctor Who, it's important if it's like modern day science to do it right. And if you're speculating on a future science, you at least need to make it plausible enough that the audience can deal with it. And it's where stories like Kill the Moon have failed, and where stories like The Time Monster, I think, have succeeded.
Yeah.
The whole idea of interstitial time, squeezing things between gaps in time. There is a concept in quantum mechanics that there is a certain point at which we can't measure any smaller distance in any smaller time than a certain chunk, quantized time.
Right.
And that quanta of time is known as Planck time.
Right.
And so the idea of being able to squeeze between two quanta, it's not completely ridiculous.
No, but I think
it's out there, but it's not
right. But I think the lovely thing about Doctor Who, especially Doctor Who in 1972, is that it does have that plausibility, to your point. But instead of calling it a quantum time transporter, they called it Tom Tit, because why not?
Yes.
Why not?
Yes.
And I
Well,
love
what else
that
could you call it?
Exactly. That's exactly. And I think I would like to think that that's what Terrence and Barry and the behind the scenes crew thought at the time. Like, why wouldn't we call it Tom Tit? Because that sounds great. And I like the fact that it's sort of derided in the context of the story too. Tom Tit indeed. It's just it's fun. Like said horns.
This story has they talk about a bruised coccyx.
Tom Tit.
Tom Tit.
Yep.
And when a naked, we get a naked Benton, I think, in this one.
That's right. He turns into a baby.
Let's not forget that time sensor. The thing
Oh.
the Doctor has Joe hold to find the master.
Yes.
The most Freudian shaped thing in a show full of many Freudian things.
Yes, that is. But honestly, that's a cool piece of kit, and I think one of the strengths of this Doctor, although he gets as we've said cut down to size numerous times throughout this season, he comes up with the neatest little bits of kit. There's the time sensor, and there's the does it have a name? The blocker that that he builds with the garbage and the wine bottle, the twirly thing. And he said we used to. build these at the academy to spoil each other's time experiments or whatever.
That's really great. I like that
It's
little
fun,
touch.
yeah. I mean, it obviously doesn't last long because the master blows it up, but you get these. Yes, he's the pompous doctor and he's eating wine and cheese and whatever, but he's also incredibly clever and builds things out of garbage. A fork and a tea bag, but he drinks the tea first. I love that he's drinking tea.
Yes.
He makes sure
it was the leaves he needed.
So he finished it off, and then he made his little thing. So it's so Pertwee.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
I wanted to talk about another technology thing that we see in this story that's actually foreshadowed at the beginning of the Mutants,
Oh,
and that's the inertial brake system that he installed in Bessie.
yeah,
So, when he and Joe are just zooming down the road
Yeah.
and then slams the brakes and it doesn't throw them out of the vehicle.
yeah,
It's a very, advanced technology, nothing we have here on Earth. But he actually is working on it at the beginning of the Mutants when they're called away by the Time Lords.
Oh, I never caught that.
He's explaining to Joe what he's working on.
Yeah.
It was the inertial braking system.
Wow, I never noticed that before. Did you ever notice that? Wow.
I only
great.
noticed it on the rewatch.
I don't watch Doctor.
Because I watch
that's
these
true.
stories like the same night. So
Oh,
I was
right,
like,
yes.
wow. Yeah.
And I think that's the benefit of we talk about obviously it was serialized TV and how stories like the war games weren't meant to be watched in one sitting. I watch it in one sitting, but I realized that's where you see what you were saying earlier about the sort of capture release, capture release, capture release. Like that's really clear when you watch a lot of these 6-parters in close proximity. But I think the benefit can be what you just said, like because you watched the Mutants and the Time Monster in the same day or very close to each other, you caught that that reference back from episode 1 of the Mutants into the Time Monster. So that's cool. I think it's cool to be able to see those. And again, you have to assume that was deliberate because he was specifically talking about it. So yeah, it's
Somebody was saying the other day, I think it might have been in one of our panels.
Yeah.
I don't know that we can maybe you might get them slightly out of order, but when you say season 9, you can kind of think of what the stories are because
Yeah.
of maybe because we've watched them too much.
yeah.
But then you look at something like the Chibnall era. There's just no way anybody could list the order of those stories.
No,
That's not
I
the
couldn't.
Same.
Yeah.
Can't even remember half the titles.
Well, exactly. Well, yeah, that's a whole another.
Sorry, I have to turn every panel into attacking Chibnall panel.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Yes, there's nothing as simple as the Time Monster or Meglos in the Chibnall era as far as titles are concerned. You have the Battle of Renskor Ev Kolos, and
Well, that's a problem. That's true.
it takes you away, and
All right.
etc.
We're we're at 2 minutes.
That's right.
Probably too late to throw it open to questions, but any final thoughts, Gabby?
Yeah, it's a really great season.
Yeah.
It's really solid. Yeah, honestly, probably a quintessential Pertwee Joe season.
Yeah.
Mike?
Couple of good guest stars in this one again, Ingrid
Yeah.
Pitt and David Prowse. Want
Yeah.
to mention that David Prowse played a Minotaur, and I believe the actor who played Vader in Rogue One played a Minotaur later on in Doctor
Oh
Who.
wow.
Yeah, no, that's
Really?
true. The only, I think at one time you could say the only actors that have played Darth Vader physically
Yeah.
were also Minotaurs on Doctor Who. If you don't count that one shot in episode 3 when he says, no, because I don't know who played him.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm sure somebody does.
And then just we end with the Master getting away.
Yep.
So that opens up more stories where we can end up
Yes.
encountering him somewhere else in the universe next season.
Yes, which feels kind of closing the loop or bringing it back to the beginning where I asked you, Gabby, about, did Day of the Daleks feel like a season opener? I think in that way, the Time Monster feels like a season ender because it did feel more epic. I think all the Atlantis stuff looked great, like lots of great sets, and there was some great film work, and the whole, the eyeballs at the end, when the Master gets away, and she's like, well, I could have destroyed him, but that's not what you wanted, so he got away. And, to fight another day, as we'll learn in season 10. So we can talk about season 10 maybe next year for the 50th anniversary of that season.
Well, we've got a few seconds left. Season 10.
Yeah.
The Three Doctors. Gabby?
Oh,
no.
yeah. Well, yeah. Save that for Console Room
Next year.
2023.
Oh, I wanted to note one other actor from that story. I think his name was Aidan Murphy, played the King in Atlantis.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm watching him going, why does he sound so familiar? Why does he look so familiar? He played Ken Poe.
He did.
Planet of the Spiders.
That's right. Yes. That's right. I love seeing those. I was just watching the season 17 Blu-ray set that just came out in the UK. And on Shada, of course, you've got Dennis Carey, who ends up playing the Keeper in The Keeper of Traken in season 18. And it's so funny how you think, God, why do I know that? And then you realize, oh, yeah, because he played the Keeper the next season. So that's a good catch. And with that, I think we're done.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks for joining. Thanks online.
Thanks, Gabby. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for coming to console room this year.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
We're almost done here.
That's right.